Welcome to Developmental Psychology, Psych 250, for the summer 2017 term. My name is Darcy J. Corbett Hall, and I will be your instructor this semester. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you and to help you become more informed developmental scientists and consumers of psychological science. As we get started, I just want to give you a little bit of information about me. Um, like I said, my name is Darcy Corbett Hall. You can call me Darcy. You don't have to call me Miss Corbett, or I'm not a doctor, so you don't call me Dr. Corbett or Professor Corbett. Just Darcy is fine. If you feel like you have to be a little bit more formal, Miss Corbett is fine. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I currently hold a Bachelor of Arts in both psychology and English from Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama, and I'm working on a doctorate in health psychology here at NDSU, though I am leaving at the end of the summer to finish a doctorate in human development and family studies at Auburn University. My research looks at peer relationships, specifically bullying and peer victimization, and how that relates to psychopathology in children and adolescents. Currently, my work focuses a lot on suicide as an outcome of victimization. Shameless product placement. Um, my office hours are every day from 10:30 to 12. My office is located in Menard Hall in Suite 232, and I am in room C26. So just come to the main psychology department and ask where my office is, and I'll be here from 10:30 to 12. If you need to make an appointment or schedule some kind of meeting via the internet, so like through Google Hangouts or something, if you're far away from campus, I'm also happy to accommodate you at another time at another location. Just a little bit about me. I'm from Alabama. I know you can't tell from my accent, but I'm from a town called Auburn, which is located right here in the belly button of Alabama. Auburn is home to Auburn University. This is sort of an iconic building on campus. I grew up on Auburn's campus. My mom and grandmother both taught at Auburn. I went to school at Auburn after going away somewhere else and then coming back. Then I came here for graduate school, and now I'm going back to Auburn. So it's like I'm always drawn back to this place. And so as much as I make fun of Alabama and make fun of the South, I do love Alabama. I do love my hometown, and I'm excited actually about moving back. Um, and I would say that my experiences in Auburn really have shaped who I am as a human being. And another part of my life that's really important to me is my family. So this is a very small part of my family. This is my dad and my mom, and then this is me as like a 2-year-old, and my sister Kristen, who's a year younger than me, or 18 months younger than me. I actually have 6 younger sisters, so obviously they're not all pictured here, but I'm the oldest of 7 children. There are 9 of us in my family, plus my brother-in-law, so 10. Um, Yes. So, my family is very important to me. Growing up in a large family, anyone who has grown up in a large family will tell you that family is a very essential part of your identity and a very central part of how you grow and develop. So, I'll talk about my family a lot. I'll talk about when I was a kid. I'll share a lot of personal stories because I think it's that we learn better when we can make personal connections. And then I think the last thing that's really important to me is my religious practice. So I'm an Episcopalian. I did not grow up in the Episcopal Church, but I came to the Episcopal religious observance in undergrad, and this is my home parish in Auburn. It's St. Dunstan's. I go to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church here in Fargo. I'm also a lay minister in the Episcopal Church, and so my religion is very important to me. Now, it will not be something that I talk about very much with you guys because I also understand that religion is something that's very personal to people, and I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to push anything. I'm definitely not. But I do think that who I am as a person, the way that I approach the world, the way that I approach other people, is really informed by my religion. And so I bring all of this up because as we progress through this semester, as we talk about human development, we'll talk about the different experiences that a person has, which inform their development and make them the person that they are. And for me, I'm a developmental social psychologist, and so For me, the social factors, our family, where we grow up, the practices and culture that we live in really do inform us. And so I encourage you, as we talk about these things, to think about your own family, your hometown, your religion, any other factors that are incredibly important to you and how they have influenced your development as a person. For extra credit, this is not your discussion for the week or for the class, but this is just an extra credit opportunity. There is a survey on Blackboard under the Opportunities for Further Learning page. It's called Tell Me About You. And what I'd like for you to do is to complete that by Friday at 11:59 p.m. I'll give you 2 points on your midterm exam. And this just is a way for me to get to know you a little bit better. It's going to be hard for us to get to know each other since this is an online course. So this is just a way for me to kind of get an introduction from you so that I can know you, because I am interested in knowing you and becoming part of your life over the next 7 weeks. One thing you'll see throughout the course is I always drink Diet Coke. I drink way too much of it. I have been known to bring an entire 2 liter to class and drink most of it in the course of a class. So I am addicted to Diet Coke, full disclosure, also chocolate. So if you're looking for ways to bribe me, these would be ideal ways. I'm totally kidding. I don't accept bribes, but I do accept gifts and offering of Diet Coke and chocolate. And also keep chocolate in my office for when you come to visit. I don't have any right now, but I do have it. And also, while we're on the subject, my office hours are available for you. I really do encourage you to take the time to come see me if you need anything, to talk about the course, if you're having issues in your life. Um, your learning process is going to be influenced by the different things that are happening, and I'm here for you to help in any way that I can to get you to where you want to go academically. So if you're having issues, please come and see me. I'm very serious about that, very approachable. I know I can be kind of scary, but I'm actually incredibly approachable. So getting into the course, sort of housekeeping, um, you are required to have a textbook for this class. It's Development Through the Lifespan. The official university listing is the 6th edition because it's the newest one. Do not buy it, get the 5th edition. There's literally no difference between the two. You will note that I myself use the 5th edition because there's literally no difference between it and the 6th. 50% of your exam material will come from the book, so you want to make sure that you get the book and that you do the readings. I know it seems like a lot. Unfortunately, with summer courses, we are shoving a lot of things into a very small amount of time. So just be strategic about how you study. And you'll notice on the syllabus that I have broken it down each day what you should read so that you're not overwhelmed, that you don't have to figure it out. You can know exactly what we're going to cover. In terms of attendance, because this is an online class, obviously you don't come to campus except for some exceptions, and we'll talk about that as the lecture progresses. But you are expected to attend the lecture by watching them online. Now, if you're interested in an in-person version of this class where you come and I give you an actual discussion-based lecture, that is an option. You just need to let me know if that you want it. I'm more than happy. I'm going to have to be here anyway to record the lectures. I'm here every day anyway. I'm happy to do an in-person version of this, but you need to let me know. I'm not going to take the time to schedule it and then be here and nobody show up. Um, you have to watch the lectures though, regardless of how you do it, because you will not pass the course. And the reason for this is, one, while I post the lecture slides, I don't post the full slides. There are a lot of blanks, which means you actually have to watch and fill in the blanks. And I do that because I know that people will just not attend class otherwise. And if you don't attend, you're going to miss a lot of important information. You're going to fail, you're going to be upset, you're going to fuss at me, and it won't be my fault. So I try really hard to help guide you through this process of becoming a good student. Um, Also, the other reason you have to attend class is you will have daily discussion questions that I give to you in the lecture, and I give them at random times in the lecture. So you kind of have to watch the whole thing so that you don't miss out on the opportunity to do those questions. I'm also able to see through Blackboard who watches the lectures and who doesn't. And if I'm noticing you're doing the discussion board but you're not watching the lectures, I'm going to get very suspicious and you may lose up to 50% of your participation points or your discussion points. So you need to watch the lectures. In other words, I am gonna force you to watch the lectures. Well, okay, I'm not going to force you. I'll just punish you if you don't. How's that? You know, if you'll be rewarded for watching the lectures and penalized if you don't. In terms of your grade in this course, the class or the course is assessed on a point system. There are 300 possible points. And then the breakdown you can see on here. A 270 points, B 240 to 269.9, C 210 to 239.9, D 180 to 209.9, and F 179.9 or less. Um, the different grades that you get represent a different quality of work. So an A is exceptional work, and that means that you're meeting all the course objectives outlined in the syllabus. B, satisfactory. The work is perfectly meeting objectives 1 through 4, but you are struggling a little bit with objective 5. C is acceptable, meaning you're meeting 1 through 3 course objectives, but you're struggling with 4 and 5. I'm happy if you get an A, B, or C. Um, A's are hard to get in this class. You can earn them if you work hard. A B is I would say fairly easy to get in this class if you do the work and you try your best. C C tends to happen when you do the work but you're not really trying. Um, the way that I've designed this course is that you can get a D if you just show up and do the work. So you can make a completely incorrect attempt and you still have a very good chance of getting a D in the class. If you get an F in this class, it's because you didn't try, you didn't take the class seriously. So please take the class seriously. Why are you wasting your time and money taking a class if you're not going to do your best? My goal is not for you to get an A, my goal is for you to do your very best work. And my job as your instructor is to get you to the highest number of points possible because that represents you doing the very best that you can do. So you can be certain that I am going to work very hard and do my best to get you the best possible grade that you can in this course. Um, and the way I'm going to do that is I will email you periodically, so 4 times in the semester, basically every 2 weeks, to let you know where your grade currently sits, why your grade is there, and what you can do in order to improve your grade or to maintain your grade if it's already good. In terms of how you get the points, the course is broken down into 4 different point categories. The majority of your points will come from quizzes. The second highest number of points will come from exams. You have a class project that is worth 40 points, and then participation, which comes from your discussion boards, which is 25 points. I will give you plenty of opportunities throughout the semester to do well and to improve your grade through extra learning opportunities that come with extra points, so I don't round up. So please don't ask me at the end of the semester to round your grade up because I won't do it. If you do all the work that you can, you do the best that you can, and you take every opportunity to do better, you will do fine in the class. You won't need me to round you up. Breaking down how you get the points, let's look at quizzes, which are worth 135 out of the 300. um, what you will need to do each week is do the assigned readings and watch the lectures each day. And you'll need to make notes. So the way that you'll make notes is with the handouts, the lecture handouts. That's what I recommend. And on Fridays at 12:30, the quiz will be posted. And the quiz will contain a certain number of questions about the lecture material. And so you'll want to have your book and your notes with you because it is open book, open notes, and you'll have 30 minutes to complete the quiz online. It is graded for accuracy, and it is due on Monday, the Monday following the day that it's put up there. So it'll go out on a Friday. You have until Monday to finish it. At 11:59 p.m. on the Monday, and they're worth between 10 to 15 points. Um, that is not right. They're worth between 25 and 30 points apiece. So sorry, I reused the slides from last semester. So Some weeks, so there's only 5 quizzes, but there's 7 weeks, and that's because 2 of the weeks in the semester are shorter, and so I didn't want to put like I wanted it to be pretty even. So we combined the 2 short weeks have been combined with the next week. Um, so just be mindful of that. Now, quizzes make up the largest percentage of your grade, and the reason I do this is because we are going to cover a lot of material in a short amount of time. And so I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do well. And I don't think that you'll do well if we just have 2 exams, one at midterm and one at finals, because you're going to have to remember half of the course material at both time points. So the quizzes are a way for you to let me know how you're doing, take questions that or take exams that mini exams which provide you know more detailed questions than we could do if we were just having 2 exams. So the quizzes seem like a lot of work, but I promise you you'll appreciate it a lot more than just having the 2 exams. There are 2 exams, one at midterm and one at finals. They're both worth 50 points. They are what I would call semi-cumulative. So they're cumulative only for the materials that precede them. So the midterm covers weeks 1 through 3, 50 points, 45 multiple choice questions, which are worth 1 point, and then an essay that's worth 5 points. Um, the final covers weeks 4 to 7. It's 50 points, 45 multiple choice questions, 1 point each, and an essay worth 5 points. Both exams have to be taken on campus. Now, if you live further than 30 minutes away from campus, you can arrange to take the exam off campus. But you need to email me within 10 days before the exam so that I can make those arrangements for you. Now, you can have on both exams a 1 page, 8.5 by 11, one-sided help sheet, which means you can have a piece of paper this size with notes on this side only. In terms of what will be on the exam, it will cover anything that we talk about in class and anything assigned for reading. I provide a study guide that gives you advice on how to study. It does not give you examples of what will be on the exam. So you'll want to make sure that you come to the review session that happens before the exam, and also that you participate on the exam question board so that you can make sure that you get any clarification that you need. And during the exam reviews, we also will have, I will post questions to you. So it'll be a chance for us to kind of do some practicing of what kinds of questions would be on there. There is a class project. It will be done as an entire class. And for the project, you'll be asked to pick a social problem in North Dakota. You'll have to then use your understanding of developmental psychology to identify the potential developmental outcomes for a minority group that is affected by this problem. And then you'll have to use developmental theory to create practical solutions to this problem. And everybody will pick one problem as a class. Everyone will be responsible for a different domain of development. Each person will be responsible for writing 1 page in response to um, the project prompt. So you'll have to write a 1 page describing the problem, describing the potential outcomes, and describing the solution. Then what we'll do, or what I will do, is I will combine all of those into a single document that we will then workshop together to make it as perfect as possible, and then we'll send the final product to the governor of North Dakota and also to the president of the university. And this will give you an opportunity to both apply what you understand and what you know from the class, as well as come up with some kind of practical interdisciplinary solution to this problem. This is developmental psychology in motion. It'll also be a great way for us to show off to the governor and the president of the university just how wonderful you are and just how wonderful this university is. Now, I know a lot of people get very stressed out when they think about a writing assignment, and I understand that. But I also know, because I have a background in English literature and I originally was going to be an English teacher, that most people Most people think they can't write because no one's ever taken the opportunity or given them a chance to improve their writing. If you can think and you can talk, then you can write. And so I'm going to do everything that I can to help you do the very best that you can on this assignment. So don't be stressed out about it. You can come to my office hours. We'll work on it together. There's absolutely no reason for you to not do well on this. Um, so So yes. So it will be fine. Don't worry about it. I promise that it will be fine. Um, Again, you will have to come. This is an on-campus thing. So there will be 2 on-campus work days that you'll be required to come to. Again, if you are at a distance from campus, and I'm defining distance as being 30 minutes or more, I will come up with an alternative for you to participate without having to drive in. But you'll need to let me know within 10 days of the first work day that you will not be able to be here. The last category is participation, which is 35 points. You'll get this from your discussion boards. Oh, I see another mistake on here. I'm sorry, I thought I proofread this better. Um, your discussion boards are worth 1 point per class session. And what will happen is I, in the lecture, will give you a discussion question, which you will then have to respond to on the discussion board. And if you do that, you get 1 point. There are no right or wrong answers. You just have to just respond to it. There are 29 possible points, though it's only worth 25 points. And what this means is that you can miss 4 classes. Now, oh, this whole thing is wrong. I'm sorry. This really upsets me. I hate when I have mistakes on here. Um, Let me just fix this really fast because it's really upsetting me. Okay. So your participation points are worth 25 total points. You can get up to 29 from doing the discussion boards. I cap them at 25, which means you can miss 4 classes. I'm also being so nice, and if you attend the on-campus classes, there are 4 of them. So we're watching Mean Girls for 2 class periods, and then we are doing um, we're doing, of course, the 2 project days. I'll give you 1 point per class that will go into addition to your discussion board question for a possible 4 points. So you can actually miss 8 classes, which I do not recommend doing because that is a large chunk of the classes for the semester. Um, but I want to give you some leeway now. But even though I cap participation, I cap all of your assigned, like all of your grades are capped at the max number of points per item. But anything that goes over that is applied towards your extra credit for this semester. So if for some reason you can't do research or you can't do the safe zone or the movie night, you can still get extra credit because I still give you the points that you make in it extra. They don't go over for each individual category. So while we're on the subject of extra credit, can you get extra credit? The answer is yes and no. Um, I don't like the idea of extra credit as we think of it because a lot of times it's just you do something that isn't very meaningful and you get some extra points for it. If you're going to get extra points from me, you're going to earn them and you're going to learn something from it and you're going to be improved as a student as a result of doing it. And so I've come up with what I think are some pretty meaningful opportunities for you to learn further and to earn extra points. So you can get up to 15 extra points beyond the 300 total that from doing 3 different things. So the first is participating in research in the department. So we are a research department, and everybody who teaches here or studies here is doing research studies. And so if you sign up for a study through SONA and you do 30 minutes, you get 2 points. So you can get up to 10 points from doing this. And to register for a study, just go to ndsu.sona-systems.com. You can register for an account and see all of the different available options. You can also take the Safe Zone Level 1 training online through NDSU's Office of Gender and Sexual Diversity. You can get 2 points, not up to, but you can get 2 points for completing this. There is a form for you to download and complete on Blackboard that just lets me know what you learned from the training, but the link is right here and it's also on Blackboard for you to complete the training. SONA is due August 6th, and then Safe Zone is due the last day of class, July 28th, at 5 p.m. And then there will be 3 movie nights throughout the summer that you can attend. The movies that I've selected are based on issues faced by ethnic, gender, or sexual minorities, and we will watch the movie and then you will have a discussion to complete, which asks you to identify how the experience of the minority group in the film could have affected their developmental outcome, and also how that experience could have affected the next generation. And so the point of this activity is to get you to think about the issues faced by minority communities and how those issues affect their development. Um, it says complete an assigned worksheet. It's really just a discussion board, and they're 1 point apiece. So if you come to all 3, you get 3 points. And they're fun movies. They're fun in the sense that they're informative. They can be difficult to watch, but we're gonna watch them. We'll have popcorn. It'll be amazing. I will also, throughout the semester, for each assignment, I may give extra credit points. Um, you'll get one extra credit point on the midterm and final if you come to the review session, or if you participate in the online discussion forum. And the online discussion for the exams is just a place for you to ask and answer questions. And I will, from time to time, give you extra credit on assignments. That is not a guarantee, but it most likely will happen. In terms of making up assignments, exams and projects can be made up. If you have a school-sanctioned excuse and you complete the work within 2 weeks of the date that the excuse says you can come back to school, then you will not get a penalty. If you don't have a university sanctioned excuse, or you do and it is more than 2 weeks before you make the work up, you will get penalized. For exams, it's 10 points a day. For the project, it's 4 points a day. If you know you're going to be gone, please let me know. If you know you're going to have an excused absence, let me know. Provide documentation ahead of time. That just saves me a lot of time and stress, because I always email students who miss work. So if I know you're going to be gone, I won't email you. It'll save me a lot of time. If the absence is unexpected, please let me know as soon as you can, because I do worry about students when they don't show up for exams or if they don't complete work, especially if they've been very reliable. I get very anxious and worried about students. Like something has happened to them, and I have been known to call Student Life to get them to do a welfare check. So please just let me know that you're okay and what's going on. Now, if you're going to be gone and you don't have an excuse, so your family's going to Hawaii, or you want to take a camping trip with Bay, like, I get it. It's summer. I'm packing my entire house and moving to Alabama starting the last day of class. I get it. I want to take as much time to relax as possible this summer. Please let me know, and we will work something out. In the past, what I've done for students who are going to be gone for an exam or going to miss a deadline because they're going to be on a trip that's not university sanctioned, and what I'll do is I'll let you make it up, but you have to make it up before it's due, and I don't let you do any extra credit for it. So that typically is what I do. So there is the option, but you have to be upfront with me and let me know, and not just blow me off and blow off the assignment and then after the fact ask for mercy. I will not be as merciful at that point. So please just let me know what's going on with you and we'll make it happen. So this is sort of a serious part of the class, and I hate this, but we have to talk about it because it is a problem. It has always been a problem. It will never not be a problem. Our entire academic system is built on honesty. We we give people the benefit that they're turning in work that is their own work, that is their original ideas. The whole system comes crashing down when people are dishonest. And for me personally, I really, really, really hate when people are not honest with me. It really bugs me. It is probably the one thing that makes me more angry than anything else is when people lie to me or are dishonest with me or deceive me in some way. And that's because I am a very direct and upfront person, and I tell people exactly what I think, exactly how I feel, and exactly what I want from them. And so when people don't do the same for me, it makes me very upset. And people cheating makes me very upset because I am a published scientist, and it has taken me years and years and years to get the very few publications that I have. And so when people just kind of steal stuff and turn it in and get credit for it, it makes me angry because it makes all the work that I've done mean nothing. Um, that goes for the same for your classmates. You owe it to your classmates not to steal their work or to not steal other people's work and get a better grade than the ones that worked hard. Um, Examples of academic dishonesty are copying answers from an exam, even if you're like, well, I think I know this is the answer. Let me just look and see if it's the right answer off of another person. That's cheating. You're getting an unfair advantage. Using notes or books on exams or quizzes when you haven't been given permission to do so is also cheating. Um, and dishonest. Copying a portion of another person's paper, even if the student isn't in the class anymore, is dishonest. Using information from the textbook or another source without a proper citation is also dishonest. So, like if you're writing a paper and you copy and paste from another document, that is dishonest. That is cheating. All of this is not okay. And if you are caught doing it, bad things will happen to you. And I'm serious as a heart attack, okay? I am not joking. I'm not exaggerating. This will happen to you. You will get a 0 on the assignment. You may get a 0 in the course, depending on how bad it is. If anyone has helped you do this, they will get a 0 on their work. If a past student, so someone who's taken the course in the past, has given you a paper to submit or to copy, they will get a 0 on that paper and potentially in my class or in another class. I know all the people who've taught developmental psychology, and they will back me up and they will give a 0 retroactively to the student. And we will report every single person involved to the registrar's office, and it will be recorded on your transcript that you cheated. And that transcript will follow you everywhere you go for the rest of your life. Anytime you apply to a school, anytime you apply for a job, you have to submit a transcript and they will know that you're a cheater. Now, those are the things that will happen. There are other things that may happen. You may lose all of your extra credit points for the semester and will not be able to earn them back or earn any more. You could fail the course, and anyone involved may fail the course, either people involved currently or people who have already taken the course. Even if they've already graduated, we will give them a 0, and their degree may have to be returned. And you could get suspended or expelled from NDSU. So this all depends on the seriousness of this. If it was a very big cheating scandal, you're going to get the book thrown at you. If it was just kind of like a mistake and you're sorry and you come and confess, I will be lenient. Um, Academic dishonesty happens when students get behind, when they don't understand, when they don't take the work seriously, and they panic. I don't want this to happen to you. I want you to be honest, and I want you to take responsibility for your actions. If you mess up and you don't plan your time wisely, or you have a bad week, or things get out of control, and you can't do the work, please just come and talk to me about it. Email me, come to my office. We will work something out so that you can do the best work that you can do without cheating. I will not be upset. In fact, I can promise you, I will not be upset with you. I had a student email me the 2 hours before a paper was due last semester and was like, look, I messed up. I'm not going to be done. What I have now is awful. I gave the student an extra 4 days. I was a little annoyed because I needed to get the grading done because it was like there was a time crunch because it was literally the last day of class that this was due. But I was so much, so much, I was very happy and so relieved that the student didn't cheat, that they had just been honest with me. So, please do not lie. Please do not be dishonest. Please just be honest about what's going on and we will work it out. That's what adults do. So, welcome to the adult world. That was stressful. Can we move on to something better now? So, let's take a quick break and I'll tell you a story. This will happen all semester. And it's going to be weird for me telling you stories because they're funny, usually, but because I'm talking to a webcam right now, it's going to be weird because nothing will laugh. No one will laugh back. I should do a 1980s laugh. Oh, I should do that. A 1980s laugh track would be amazing. I may surprise you and do that next time. So this is actually the second time I'm recording this lecture, and I did it earlier today, and somehow I hit stop recording after I started and did not realize until I had recorded the entire 75-minute lecture. I was so upset. Understandably so, because I had already done a whole lecture. So yeah, so this is going to be an adventure for me. I've never taught an online class before. So if you want an in-person class, I will be so accommodating to get that to happen because it's weird talking to a webcam. I will be completely honest. So that's my funny story. You're probably like, that's not really that funny. That's kind of sad, but it is what it is. I'm here at 11 o'clock at night. Menard Hall is incredibly creepy at night. Um, Doing this because I messed up earlier today. So you can laugh at me. Okay, if you need accommodations, please email me or come see me in my office hours within 2 weeks of today, and I'm happy to accommodate you in any way that I can. Okay? Now, what we're going to do may seem a little silly, but I think it's important for us to do it. Sorry. Um, Sorry. I'm a nanny, and I'm nannying tomorrow, and so my boss just emailed me. Okay, so I think it's important for us to enter into a class agreement because um, it's kind of easy for us to just assume that we're going to come to class and we're going to do well because we just came to class. Well, that's not the way it works. And I want us to enter into some kind of agreement so that we're both on the same page about what our individual responsibilities are. So wherever you are, I want you to repeat after me. And I know it seems really silly, but it's actually a lot of fun, especially if we do it together. Okay? I agree to respect individual differences. I agree to respect my peers and instructors. I agree to be polite and respectful of others. I agree to respect my peers' right to ask for help, no matter how stupid their question may be. I agree to ask for help, even if I feel stupid for asking the question. I agree that if I do not want to pay attention in class, that rather than look at Facebook or buy things on Amazon, I will just stay in my dorm and not waste my time or disrespect my own intelligence. And most importantly, I agree to laugh at Darcy's jokes, even when they aren't funny, and full disclosure, they usually aren't. So this is the agreement that we are entering into. You agree to all these things, and I also agree to these things with you. And I agree to laugh at my own jokes, and to respect you, and to not judge you, no matter how stupid your question is. I won't tell you that it's stupid. I may think it, but I won't make fun of you for it. Um, if you continue in this class, if you continue your enrollment in this class, you are signifying your agreement to these terms. If, as long as I am teaching this class, I am also signifying my agreement to these terms. If for some reason we need to update or change this agreement, we will do so as a class. All right, let's get started with developmental psychology. Oh, I'm so excited now that we're done with the boring housekeeping. So, developmental psychology is a science. In fact, we could call it developmental science if we wanted to. In fact, some schools do. And developmental science is the study of the constancy and the change that occurs in individual people throughout the lifespan. What I mean by constancy is things that are constant, things that stay the same, things that don't change. And then on the other side, change, things that grow, things that get better, get worse, become different. This is development. Development is our entire life is full of things that remain the same and things that change. Developmental science or developmental psychology is both applied and interdisciplinary. And what this means is that we can use our science to explain and solve problems. We can apply what we know to a practical problem. It's also interdisciplinary in the sense that it's built from the work of psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, biologists, neuroscientists, and more. So there is a degree called developmental psychology, but you can be anything, have any kind of degree, and be a developmental psychologist as long as the work that you do involves the study and application of what we study of human development, and specifically the development of our psychological, so our cognition, our social interaction, anything that affects us as an individual on a psychological or brain level. Developmental psychology is theory driven, which means that we make predictions based on a testable explanation, description, or prediction of observed behavior. So an example of a theory could be, if I go to the mall and I see two people in the mall, and one person is really enjoying the shopping and the other person is carrying all the bags and looks bored out of their mind, my theory, my explanation, my description, or my prediction of this behavior is that the person who doesn't look excited is only doing it because they were dragged there by the other person. And this is a testable explanation because I can go up to that person and say, hey, why are you at the mall today? Are you enjoying your trip? Why did you come? Were you bullied into coming? Were you asked to come by your partner? Were you guilted into coming by your partner? It's testable. I can actually find out the answer by applying a very simple test. And that's what we mean by theory driven. And that's what differentiates a science from an art, or a science from something else, science from religion. We can actually test, using the scientific method, the questions that we have. When it comes to development, we see development as both continuous and discontinuous. Continuous is the idea that we develop by improving the skills that we have. So we're all born with the capability to communicate. Over time, we improve those skills. We make them more sophisticated. On the other side of this, we can see development as discontinuous, meaning that we develop in stages and new skills emerge at specific times. It's so if we look at a discontinuous viewpoint of developmental psychology or of human development, you could say, well, yes, we all communicate, but we develop verbal communication at certain stage of life. We sophisticate that with, verbs and nouns and other grammatical structures at different stages in our life. Um, We also see the differentiation between one course of development versus context. So, stage theorists, so people who create theories that really are more stage based, say that everyone develops at the same pace. In other words, we can divide all of development into very specific boxes of time, and everyone develops everything within those boxes at the exact same time, at the exact same pace. Context theorists, on the other hand, say that development is a unique combination of personal and environmental circumstances. So, the way that I developed, the way that I developed my personality, physically, cognitively, socially, psychologically, occurs differently than the way that you have developed in those ways because of the different environments that we grew up in. You probably grew up in the upper Midwest, I grew up in the deep South. Um, I grew up in a cultish religion with very conservative parents. You may have done the same. You may have grown up in a very liberal, progressive home, so you may have developed differently than I did. And so context theorists consider the ways, like the different factors that could have created a person's developmental path. And so if we were to look and sort of compare discontinuous and continuous, a continuous theorist would say that this man right here develops from infancy to old age in sort of a gradual incline, sort of like a ramp. Whereas a stage theorist would say that this young lady developed from babyhood to adulthood through a series of steps that they reach at different points. So there's not like a sort of gradual incline. There is a very clear distinction, a clear increase in competency and sophistication as development continues and goes forward. Within the field of developmental psychology, there is this debate over nature versus nurture. Do we develop because of our biology, our heredity, our genetics, or do we develop the way that we are? Do we become the person that we are because of our environment, our culture, and our parents? An example of the nature argument. I'm going to use Southern culture since I'm Southern and I can pick on it. Southerners tend to have diabetes more because of their genetics. That could be a potential nature explanation. Well, Southern people just have the genetic propensity towards diabetes. On the other side of this, we could explain that Southerners have diabetes because of their high-fat, high-carb diets. So it's all about environment. It's like there's nothing genetically that makes you more likely to have diabetes. You just have these high carb diets, and so you're in high fat diets. So it leads to higher rates of diabetes. Now, as we'll discuss later this week, the nature versus nurture dichotomy is actually a false dichotomy. It really is a combination of both. And so really a better explanation would be, well, Southerners have the genetic propensity to diabetes because of their high fat, high carb diet. So actually, when creating this dichotomy, you're de-sophisticizing. I don't even know if that's a word. You're making less sophisticated the explanation. It's more sophisticated to combine both nature and nurture, but we'll talk about that as the week progresses. Developmental psychology takes a lifespan perspective, and what that means is that our development occurs across our entire life. So from the moment of conception to our death, everything that occurs to us, from the moment our dad's sperm unites with our mom's egg, everything that happens to us from that point until we take our last breath affects the way that we develop. Now, we split development, the lifespan, into periods, and periods have specific demands and changes that occur across this lifespan. So the periods that we will cover in this class are infancy and toddlerhood, early childhood, middle childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, middle adulthood, and late adulthood. Now, depending on your theory, your theoretical or perspective, where you're trained, what you study, those periods may be different. But for the purposes of this course, these are the periods that we will cover. We also see the lifespan as being multidimensional and multidirectional. By multidimensional, we mean that our development is influenced by biological, psychological, and social factors. There isn't one thing that creates us and makes us who we are. It's a combination of different things, or many different things. By multidirectional, we mean that changes occur both as an increase and a decrease. So we can, increase in our biological development while decreasing in our psychological development. We can, the lifespan can see changes in cognition that go up and then down. And all of these dimensions are independent. So you can see many different types of changes. And actually we do, as we develop, you'll see as we get to adulthood that we start to see decreases in certain types of cognitive ability, but increases in others. We see certain physical decreases and increases in others. So it's not that all of life, all of development is like this or like this or like this. It's not that we start out really great and then just get progressively worse. Things change on different dimensions in different directions. We also see that the lifespan and development across it is highly plastic or flexible. So it's not rigid. The world is not, and human development is not black and white. It's all gray, and it's all up for negotiation. And it's affected by multiple forces. Again, this goes back to this idea of multidimensional development. We are not just influenced by our biology. We're not just influenced by our parents and the environment in which we grow up. We're influenced and we develop as a result of many different things. Some of these forces, or all of these forces, can be categorized into categories such as biological, historical, social, and cultural. And they can be subdivided into categories. So we have age-graded influences, and these are events that are strongly related to one's age. So an example of an age-graded force of development would be in the United States, most teenagers get their driving license at the age of 16. This is dependent upon a person's age. The second is history-graded influence, and these are events that are experienced by the same cohort or group of people. So my cohort, people born in the early 90s, a history-graded influence that has affected our development was the terrorist attacks on 9/11/2001. That has influenced the way that we've grown up. We live in a world where we've had to worry about the threat of terrorism. Where getting on an airplane is potentially threatening, where we've been in a war for the last couple of decades. That has influenced our development as a society. We're much more suspicious than we should be, or we would be in other circumstances. We tend to be much more anxious and fearful as a result of living in a constant state of threat. The last influence is a non-normative influence, and these are irregular events that happen to one or few people without a predictable timetable. So an example of this would be, say, having a really amazing teacher who helps shape you into the person you want to be. I've had that experience. I had a really great mentor in undergrad. I've had a really great graduate mentor, and they have pushed me to be a much better student and to take different opportunities, different academic opportunities, different career opportunities that have really shaped me into who I am. That doesn't happen for everyone, though. That's non-normative. It's not something that we would just expect to happen automatically. So now I'm going to give you your discussion board question. And this does not mean that you should stop watching the lecture, because there's going to be more information and potentially more points that you could get. So you want to keep watching. But the question that I would like for you to respond to on your week 1 discussion board for class 1, so in the subject put class 1, I want you to discuss what the key characteristic of a scientific field of study is. So what do you think of all the things we've talked about? What differentiates a science from a non-science? What is the key thing that makes a science different from a non-science? So I want you to think about that, write this question down, and then after the lecture is over, I would like for you to respond to it on the discussion board. You can find the discussion board on Blackboard under discussion board, and just click week 1, create a thread, put in the subject class 1. So take a minute to write that down. Write the question down, and then we'll move on. Okay, so let's move into a discussion of the historical underpinnings of development, because without understanding where we've been as a science, we're not going to really understand where we can go and where we need to go. So, from a very historical perspective, let's start with the medieval period, and this is from the 16th to the 15th centuries. And during this period, the predominant view of development was that of preformationism, which is we develop from tiny versions of ourselves. And from this preformationistic point of view, we have what's called the homunculus. This is actually a little drop of sperm. It's an illustration of a drop of sperm, and you can see within the sperm a little human being. And essentially, what these medieval thinkers thought was that we literally are transmitted as little tiny people from our father to our mother, and then we come out and we're just a little tiny person. And we have all of the capacities that we will have our entire life. The only thing that changes is our size. So we're literally as we are. So I would be, when I was born, I am the same person that I was when I was born, and all of my faculties and all of my capabilities, I'm just a much bigger version of that. Now we know that that's ridiculous, but that's what people thought in the 16th to the 15th centuries. And then we move into the Reformation, or the 16th century, and, and influenced by people like John Knox and John Calvin and Martin Luther, we get this idea that children are naturally evil and must be reformed through harsh discipline. In other words, children are born and they have a great psychological, moral deficiencies, and through harsh discipline, we become incredibly moral and psychologically well adjusted people. The irony is that we know now that harsh discipline does not make you a better person. In fact, it makes you a much more um, maladaptive and not so well adjusted individual. Um, when we moved into the Enlightenment period, so the 17th to 18th centuries, we get this idea of tabula rasa, which is Latin for blank slate. And the idea behind tabula rasa is that children are blank slates. They are not they don't come with understanding, they don't come with morality. They literally are written upon by their parents. And so this places a huge burden. It places the entire onus for development on parents and says parents are completely 100% responsible for how their children turn out. And so you can see from these historical understandings of development how our view of people and how they come to us, how they're born, and how they grow, and what factors influence their growth really influence the way that we treated children, we treated adults um, in those periods, as well as how we do today, because we still have vestiges of this. It's not been that long since the Reformation in the greater scheme of things. Um, if you think about it, you know, this idea that we're tiny versions of ourselves in the medieval period up until like the 20th century, children were treated like adults. If a child committed a crime, they could be punished as an adult. Children had to work in really harsh, harmful conditions because they were just basically little adults. We see the rise in very severe corporal punishment. We still see that with parents spanking their children to this day because of this idea that children know right from wrong automatically and we have to beat the wrong out of them. Well, that's not true. It's very harmful. And then also this idea that that parents are an essential part of a child's development. While that is true, they're not everything that there is to be. Parents are not the end and the beginning and the end when it comes to development. So the way that we approach development in these periods, these historical periods, really did influence who we are as a culture and who we are as individuals today. It wasn't until the 18th century with Jean-Jacques Rousseau that we really began to have a more scientific view of human development. Rousseau proposed that children are noble savages. In other words, children are wild and unpredictable, but they deserve dignity because they are human beings. And Rousseau proposed that children are born with a knowledge of right and wrong, and on their own they'll develop as they ought to. And so he takes sort of the responsibility off of the parents. He still kind of clings to this not necessarily right notion that we are born with this innate understanding of what is good and what is evil, but he does say, we're going to grow the way that we're going to grow, and it doesn't really matter if other outside forces contribute or not. And how he contributed to our scientific development as a field is he proposed that there are 5 stages of us learning through this innate knowledge, learning and becoming the people that we ought to be. And those stages are infancy, childhood, pre-adolescence, adolescence, and adulthood. So they're very similar to the stages that, or the periods that we will be talking about in this course this semester. In the 19th and 20th centuries, we started to see a lot more empirical or scientific exploration of development. So in the 19th and 20th centuries, we start to see the popularity of the baby biographies, and I'm sure most of you had a parent or maybe even a grandparent who kept a baby book, and this is what a baby biography is. People in the 19th and 20th centuries would write down, oh, baby said first word today, baby crawled today, baby cried when they tried to walk and fell down. And it's from these recordings, from creating this data about the way children were growing, that we were able to start using these biographies for scientific research. And from this, scientific theories emerged. And those theories helped us to understand development in a much more sophisticated way. And one of the most important theories that developed and that influences developmental psychology and our understanding of the way that people develop is Darwin's theory of evolution. And I'm sure that in your biology class you have talked a little bit about the theory of evolution and how this theory influences our way of approaching human development. There are 2 key components of the theory of evolution which influence developmental psychology, and the first is natural selection, and that is that individuals who don't adapt don't survive. Um, and what this means is that if we live in a society, in a culture, in an environment where speed, for example, is necessary for survival, people who refuse to adapt to this, who refuse to become faster, who are just naturally not very fast, are not going to survive. So I'll use myself as an example. Say that I live in, an environment where I need to be fast because there are these like velociraptors who will swoop in and grab you and eat you. And so between me and Usain Bolt, the Jamaican Olympian who is a very fast runner, he is probably more likely to survive than I am because I am not a fast runner. And so what will happen is one day Usain and I will be hanging out, and then a velociraptor will show up and he'll take off and I'll get eaten. And then he will go and reproduce, and he will pass the speed gene on to his offspring, who will then pass it on to theirs. Now, say the next generation lives in a society or in a culture where not only do you need to be fast, but you also have to be a good swimmer. So let's say Usain's, we have offspring, and Usain's offspring is like basically the next Michael Phelps, who's like a super awesome swimmer, and in a situation where you need to be able to run away from a velociraptor and then swim away from it because the velociraptor has learned to swim, um, the offspring of Usain Bolt who can run fast may not be as good at swimming as the offspring of Michael Phelps. And so Michael Phelps' offspring, who's also fast and is a good swimmer, will survive the velociraptor attack and will then reproduce, and thus creating a new generation that is fast and a good swimmer. Over time, this leads to the second principle, the survival of the fittest, which is individuals who adapt to environmental challenges have a better chance of reproducing. And so ultimately, in a nutshell, what the theory of evolution states is that over time, over a period of a million billions of years, individuals who have these adaptive characteristics that enable you to survive the challenges, environmental challenges of living in the world, are the ones who are able to reproduce, and they pass that genetic propensity onto their offspring, who pass that on to their offspring, who then pass their adaptive genetics onto their offspring. And over time, we get the people that we have today who are incredibly adaptive to the environmental challenges that are faced by all human beings. From Darwin, we get G. Stanley Hall's normative periods. And what G. Stanley Hall proposed is that every human being goes through a maturational process, a genetically determined series of events that unfold automatically. In other words, within our essence, we have this DNA, and our DNA determines genetically what will happen to us across our lifespan, and all of those things will happen when they're supposed to happen. The other thing that G. Stanley Hall introduced to developmental psychology that's so important is this normative approach. In other words, we don't just say, well, this is what we think happened, or based on our limited experience, this is what we think will happen. We measure behavior from large research samples. So if you participate in SONA, you'll be participating in G. Stanley Hall's normative approach. In other words, as a psychologist, as a developmental psychologist, I will collect data on I'll ask specific questions about specific social experiences from a large group of people, and then I'll find the averages, and I will compare those averages to different personal characteristics. So what we get from this as developmental psychologists is our understanding of what is typical of development, what we can expect to see from the largest group of people in the population. And these typical developments are represented by age-related averages. So in other words, we find out, okay, when do people start to understand their gender identity? We question large samples of people, we take averages, and we find, well, typically people about the age of 3 become aware of their gender identity. And so then we can say, we expect that gender identity develops at the age of 3. Now, because it's an average, there can be people who develop it early or later. And that's the really cool thing about this normative approach, is it gives us the ability to understand sort of the variance and the subtle differences across groups of people. And we're not just guessing anymore. We're not just making things up like in the early days where we're just saying, well, people are blank slates, but we're able to actually say, yeah, actually we can see this, or no, we can't see that, because we're using a more scientific approach. From the normative approach, we transitioned to Binet and Simon, who came up with mental health testing, or psychological testing. And Binet and Simon were French psychologists, and they used a normative approach to create a standardized intelligence test. And what this test did is allowed them to create norms for academic development in French school children. And from this early tests, or this early research from Binet and Simon, we get the Sanford-Binet intelligence test, which is a common intelligence test used today. And this set the standard for psychological research and psychological treatment and assessment, where we base our predictions, we base our assessments off of norms that we get from testing large groups of people the same exact way every time. As developmental psychology became more scientific and more based in empirical research, we start to develop theories. And some of the earliest theories for developmental psychology are the psychoanalytic theories. And the psychoanalytic theories are stage theories. And they all have some things in common. And the main thing they have in common is this idea that people have to confront conflicts between biology, so their biological urges, which they call the id, and society and societal expectations, which are called the superego. The resolution of this conflict, or our conscious self, is our ego, and that resolution determines an individual's personality traits. The earliest psychoanalytic theorist was Freud, and his theory was called the psychosexual theory. And what he proposed is that a parent's control of a child's sexual urges as children determine their functionality as adults. And so what this means is that as we as we develop and as we grow, we have these urges to gratify ourselves that are based in a sexual drive. That's not saying that everything that we do is sexual in nature. It just means that the process that's driving our need to fulfill ourselves is sexual in nature. And Freud's psychoanalytic theory, his psychosexual theory, is a stage theory, and it has 5 stages from birth to adolescence. And as children pass through each stage, the id urges the ego, so the child's consciousness, to fulfill a biological drive for self-gratification. So say the child really, really, really wants a toy and this other kid has it. The id is going to say, take the toy from him, hit him, push him over, do whatever it takes to get the toy, because he really wants the toy. On the other side, the superego, as the conscience, urges the ego to resist the negative behavior. Don't hit that child. Share with him. Maybe if you're nice to him, he'll share it with you. And so what ends up happening is the ego has to make a decision about whether or not they're going to hit or they're going to give in. Or are they going to come up with a compromise? And ultimately, people who can come up with that compromise, the ego compromise, are the ones that develop healthily. From Freud, we get Erik Erikson's theory, the psychosocial theory. Erikson's theory states that the ego acquires skills at each stage to make the individual a productive member of society, and this is also a stage theory. And Erik Erikson had 8 stages that went from birth to death. And he proposed that the resolution of the id-superego conflicts indicates a healthy or maladaptive development. So people who are able to resolve the conflict are healthy, and people who cannot resolve the conflict are maladaptive. Erikson was one of the first theorists to really push this idea that cultural differences occur in development. People in Asia develop differently than people in Europe, people in North America develop differently than people in South America, and that all of our cultures, and even within our continent and within our country, subcultures, people who identify as LGBT, people who are New Americans, people who are Native Americans, people who are white, people who are African American, all of these people may develop differently based on their cultural experiences. And so instead of putting everybody sort of through the same developmental test and saying, okay, do we all match each other? Erikson said, let's look at the way that people match other people within their social group, within their culture. From the psychoanalytic theories, we move into behaviorism and social learning theories. And the central idea behind these theories is that a stimulus is applied or taken away or observed by a person over time, and that leads to a predictable response. In other words, the perfect example is from the moment you started school. You learned that when you hear a bell, you get up, you put your stuff in your desk or in your backpack or in your locker, and you go to the next scheduled thing. And now we have these amazing smartphones that have the same thing. They have bells. What happens when you get a text message? What happens when you get an email? You react to it immediately. This thing, this little tiny 300, well, I don't know how much, I guess 600 now. I haven't bought an iPhone in years. This thing controls us completely because of this conditioning that we had as in our earliest days, where we did things in response to a bell. That a bell keeps us on track, that a bell reminds us of what we need to do. On the other side of this, behaviorism proposes that we can modify behaviors through conditioning and modeling, and we can eliminate undesired behaviors and increase desired responses. Punishment is a good example of this. If we don't want people to steal, we put them in prison. We give them a fine. We make them pick up garbage. We do things that are unpleasant, that really pushes them to not want to do it again. On the other side, we reward people for doing things. If we want people to do a good job, we give them bonuses. We give them special benefits at work. If You clean your room. As a child, your mom maybe had, or your dad had some kind of thing that they gave you that made you want to do that more. Um, as an example, when I was little, my grandmother babysat me almost every day because my mom was in graduate school. And when I was being potty trained, my grandmother would give me a candy corn every time I used the bathroom. And over time, I started to use the bathroom without having to be told because I wanted a candy corn. And now, every time I use the bathroom, I look for my candy corn because I've come to expect it. And this is classic behaviorism. And Watson was one of the first psychologists to really study behaviorism in human beings. He was inspired by Russian scientist Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov, who really came up with this idea and discovered behaviorism. And how he discovered it is he would have dogs in his lab and he would ring a bell and then he would feed them. Over time, all he had to do was ring the bell, and the dog would start salivating because they had come to associate the sound of the bell with eating. Watson took this and developed classical conditioning, which is you apply a neutral stimuli, the bell, to a stimulus, the food, and then you get a reflexive response, the salivation. Or you combine a neutral response using the bathroom, or a candy corn, with a stimulus using the bathroom. No, sorry, I got lost in thought. You have a neutral stimulus, which is using the bathroom, the stimulus, the candy corn, and then the reflexive response. You automatically, when you get the candy corn, or when you see a candy corn, or when you use the bathroom, you think about wanting a candy corn. To use my childhood experience. Not necessarily the best example, but it was a good attempt. We can laugh now. Watson developed this idea and discovered this idea from an experiment with little Albert, and we call it the little Albert experiment. So Albert was an 11-month-old child who was the child of a nurse in the hospital where Watson worked, and he would come into the lab and Watson would show him this white rat. And then when Albert was touching the white rat, a research assistant would make a loud noise when the kid was touching the rat, and it would scare little Albert. And so over time, Albert would scream with fear at the sight of a rat. Then they took it a step further and just showed him something white and fluffy, and he still screamed because he associated white and fluffy with a loud, scary noise. Horrible example of like unethical research practices that completely scarred this child for life. We don't really know what happened, but he probably was terrified of fluffy things for the rest of his life. It's horrible. I feel bad for him. Watson's classical conditioning was built upon by B.F. Skinner, who came up with the operant conditioning theory, which proposes that the frequency of behaviors can be increased with a reinforcer or decreased with a punishment. In other words, if we want someone to do something, all we have to do is reward them when they do it, and they will continue to do it. On the other side, if we want someone to stop doing something, then we apply a punishment. And he did this through the use of this really clever experiment where he put a mouse or a rat or some kind of rodent inside this box and had them press the lever. And they would use different lights to signal different behaviors. And they would have a speaker and they would make a noise. And so what would happen is the rat would get the signal through the noise and the light, would press the lever and would receive food. And over time that built up this reinforcement where when I see a light and I hear a sound, I push this lever and I get rewarded. Well, then after they taught the rat to do that, they reversed it. And now when the rat pressed the lever, they got shocked. And so suddenly the rat didn't want to do it anymore. In fact, all they had to do was make the noise in the lights, and the rat would be afraid. He wouldn't even push the lever. He would be afraid because it hurt. Because this floor here is all metal. It's all conductive metal, and it's connected to this wire, what's connected to an electricity source. So literally, there's nowhere this rat could go that it wasn't shocked. Again, maybe not the most ethical thing in the world, but it did give us this really interesting understanding of how we can condition people and condition their behaviors. Bandura took this idea of an application of an actual physical stimulus and and looked at it from a social perspective, and he came up with what he called the social learning theory. And the social learning theory proposes that children learn pro-social and antisocial behaviors by observing them modeled by their parents and other authority figures. And so this theory emphasizes modeling. And modeling is when the adult or the authority figure or the older child demonstrates an appropriate or an inappropriate behavior. In other words, if I want to teach a child how to use a fork, then I will sit there and I will, take the fork to my mouth and I will, demonstrate to the child the appropriate way to use a fork. Over time, the child observes this. They observe the person using the fork to eat the food, and they will begin to do the same thing. On the other side, if someone engages in a bad behavior, so throwing spaghetti, the child, if the person is not corrected for throwing the spaghetti and they're enjoying it, the child's going to see that and be like, oh, I want to do that. That looks like fun. And they're going to start doing it over time. Later, Bandura started to emphasize cognition and self-efficacy. Within this context of social learning. So cognition is just simply thinking about behaviors. The child observes the behavior, they think about it, they're like, why would I want to do this? What is the point of this? Self-efficacy is the development of a personal ethics through feelings of competence and a desire to succeed. So children want to be competent in society, they want to succeed in society and in their social interactions, so they're going to engage in behaviors that increase their feeling of competence and give them a better chance to succeed. And over time, that becomes our personal ethic, our personal sense of ethics, our personal sense of right and wrong. What works for me to get me what I want in society? And you can either have pro-social ethics or anti-social ethics, depending on what you want and what you think is the best way to get there. But that's a discussion for another day. Then we move beyond conditioning, we move beyond social learning, and we get to the cognitive developmental perspective of development. And this was championed by Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist. And Piaget's cognitive developmental theory states that children actively construct knowledge as they manipulate and explore their world. In other words, children are not just mindless vessels that you pour information into. They literally are thinking about what they see, and they're doing little tiny experiments to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Piaget's cognitive developmental theory is a stage theory with 4 stages from birth to adolescence. Piaget was like, we don't develop after adulthood, after adolescence. We get through our teenage years and we're done. Yeah, there's some problems with Piaget, but he's still a very important figure in both developmental psychology and education, educational psychology. And this theory, this cognitive developmental theory of Piaget's, has 2 core concepts. The first is adaptation. So children adapt their thinking to a better representation of the external world. So they learn more information, they think about it, they understand it better, and so they adapt what they think to better representation. And this better adaptation, this taking new information, taking what we know and figuring out a compromise between the conflict that comes from that, is called equilibrium. It's the reconciliation of what we think and what we observe. And so to give you a practical example of this child looks and he sees a horse and he understands horses, and so he thinks that's a horse because I know what a horse looks like because I have a see and say, and the horse says neigh. And then the child looks and he's like, oh, he sees a zebra and he's like, oh, well, that's a striped horse, because he doesn't have a concept of what a zebra is, right? It looks like a horse, it's striped, but he doesn't have a concept of a zebra, so he just assumes that it's a horse because it looks like a horse. He just adds the stripes, he adds the information in, but it's still not accurate. So then the child, through his exploration, learns the definition of zebra and understands what a zebra is. And so Then he comes up to the conclusion that zebras look like striped horses. So now when he sees a striped horse, he's going to realize, oh, that's a zebra. That isn't a horse. And this is adaptation. This is taking new information in and applying it to our understanding. And finally, he looks and he sees another zebra and he thinks, oh, that's a zebra. I know this because now I understand what a zebra is. And that is equilibrium. It's the combination of this adaptation with of new information with what we understand and then applying it in an effective way. And this entire process from, the initial understanding to the equilibriized understanding is cognitive development according to Piaget. I want to thank you for paying attention. I'm sorry we went just 8 minutes over, but for the next class, for class 2, for tomorrow, I would like for you to read pages 20 to 38 in your textbook and think. This is not your discussion question for class 2. This is just a question for you to contextualize your reading. What is a research question do you have about human development? We will talk more about this tomorrow. If you have any questions, please email me, darcy.corbetthall@ndsu.edu. I'm happy to answer those questions. Remember to take the Tell Me About You survey by Friday and to read the syllabus before class tomorrow. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Have a great day.